Hey everybody, Antoni here with a review of Bizet's Carmen, which was shown last night at the Arena di Verona. The conductor was Henrique Nanasi, the production was by Franco Zeffirelli, and the choreography was done by the El Camboria Represa da Lucia Real. Now I don't need to explain any further of why I love Carmen with a passion. But since I saw this opera last night with my mother, she basically interjected a few things about the two male leads, Don Jose and Escamillo. She felt that the main difference is how they are as men. Don Jose started out as pretty decent, though quite naive. He falls for Carmen's charm, is in love with her, and even when they got together, he tried his hardest to love her as much as he can to the point where he joined the bandits. But months later, he became so obsessed with her that he lost his own dignity to the point where he loses his own morality, kills her, and thus his downfall was present, especially as a man. Not to mention, he completely abandoned Micaela, his first love. And when he found out that his mother was dying, well, Carmen just did not want to hear from him anymore because she thought he's not even that manly. He's not even her type anymore. She was fed up with him from the beginning. Whereas with Escamillo, he was a manly man. A man who followed his passions. A man who's followed his dreams. A man who knows how to charm. A man who just is not afraid to speak his mind and show how much guts he has. That's what makes Carmen so attracted to this ever-fabled Toreador. So with that little bit of analysis out of the way, let's get on with what I thought about the production. Now, what more can you expect from someone like Franco Zeffirelli to direct this opera, and especially when it comes to such magnificent scenery, great costumes, and just that feel of authenticity in this opera. I mean, you also have your donkeys running around the stage and horses as well. It was just so authentic that I felt like I was actually going into a time machine and ended up somewhere in Seville where I see all of these people walking around the streets and just living their lives day to day. Especially when it comes to the tavern scenes, which I thought were just very colorful, and especially the cave scene, which had this type of, gothic and dark feel. And then came the bullfighters arena, which was very exciting. What made it more exciting was the flamenco dancing that was done on the left and right sides of the stage. So overall, what more can I expect from someone like Franco Zeffirelli in this production of Carmen? This definitely shows that Franco Zeffirelli is, without a doubt, one of opera's greatest directors of all time. And his production of Carmen really showed just what he can do, how he can imagine this and that, and the authenticity that he has for such a production like this. And the singing was very solid all around, though there are a few weak links here and there. In the title role, we have Georgian mezzo-soprano Anita Rachvelishvili, who is also very well acclaimed as Carmen throughout the world, well, mostly throughout Europe and the Americas. And I also saw her as Konchakovna in the live-streamed version of Prince Igor, which was live-streamed from the Met, and it was taking place back in Berlin. So, her singing was probably one of the best that I've ever heard. It has such a full-bodied, warm, lush, seductive, and simply put, very exciting and fiery timbre. This is no wonder why the public and the fans really care for her as Carmen. She not only played Carmen, but she was Carmen. She is basically put one of the Carmens of the 21st century. She was able to embody that role very well, and it's no wonder why both the critics and the fans love her or even adore her in this role. She has a great flair for drama, and it was also helped by her luscious mezzo-soprano voice, which she used to such a great advantage, especially whether they be in the scenes of her, well, in her opening act, the Habanera, or her Seguidilla, or even her card aria. They were all sung with such a fire and passion that few Carmens of this very age can equal. Now, the Don Jose, who was sung by Jorge de Leon, was pretty much the weak link of this production. His voice, well, it had that vibrato, which sounded a little bit unpleasant. His high notes were great. Well, they were good. However, his vibrato was pretty much there, and he screamed his notes, which I thought was very unhealthy for a young singer like him. Granted, he had the looks of a Don Jose. He was youthful. He was, well, simply put, a man in his 20s who is still quite youthful and quite unsure of himself of what he wants to do. And he embodied that pretty well. However, his voice needs some serious tuning up to do. But I'm sure that will take time. I'm sure that he will be a lot better within like 5 to 10 years or so. Yet, as for now, his voice was shrill. It felt forced. He was pretty much forcing his voice since this was the Arena di Verona. I mean, you expected to have such a huge voice to sing in this very hall. And I felt like, of course, he embodied that role well, but his voice needs some serious tuning up to do. Now, I cannot sing any better than him, but yeah, it will take a lot more time for his voice to be a lot more developed. Even though he does have some good high notes, even though he does have a good flair for drama, it's his voice more than anything that needs more tuning up. The Micaela was sung by Tatiana Yagutsova. She was decent for the most part. She embodied the role of Micaela very well. She was very youthful, very pretty. However, her voice at times had a little bit of that vibrato, especially in the first act, and especially in her aria. There are moments in which sometimes in her aria, that high note came out as a little bit of a scream, and her timbre was quite insecure for someone singing Micaela. But still, she embodied the role pretty well, yet her voice needs a little bit of a tune-up. In the role of Escamillo, we have American basso Raymond Aceto, who is another great performer. In fact, the two best performers of this opera were Anita Rachvelishvili and Raymond Aceto as Escamillo. Both of them were easily in the top of their game, especially that of Aceto. His Toreador song was sung with such ebullience, virility, and such power that it was just so magnetic. Just to see someone like this embody the role of the Toreador very, very well, and he pretty much looked the part. He looked more mature than the Don Jose, Jorge de Leon. He embodied the role very well, and it was helped by such a magnificent timbre, a very well-focused voice that is able to be so homogeneous with both the low, middle, and high notes that it was just a huge pleasure to see someone who gives such great dramatic singing like Mr. Aceto give it his all. And between you and me, I always love it when a bass baritone or a high basso sings Escamillo. It just adds a lot more virility, a lot more masculinity, a lot more manliness, so to say, to this role. It also adds a lot more maturity because, well, simply put, Escamillo is a lot more mature and a lot more experienced than the likes of Don Jose. And boy, did Raymond Aceto embody that very, very exceptionally. In the role of Carmen's friends, Frasquita and Mercedes, we have Irene Favro and Alice Marini, respectively. Both of them are very fine singers, and even though their roles were quite minute, they had very great chemistry with the Carmen Anita Rachvelishvili. And the same thing can be said about the roles of Dan Cairo and Remendado, sung by Gabriele Rebis and Saverio Fiore. Both of them had very great chemistry, especially that little can that they did. What I also liked about the Frasquita and Mercedes, Favro and Marini, was also their card scene. They sang it very well, especially that of Irene Favre. She was just absolutely fantastic. Her voice just glittered all throughout. And they played very well off of each other. Now, going back to the Dan Cairo and Remendado, Ribis and Fiore, they both have excellent chemistry and great voices. And in terms of their comic timing, they were not clowning around. They were basically playing these two as straight men. Then we have the Zuniga, sung by Victor Garcia Sierra. Even though his voice was decent for the most part, and even though he looked and embodied the role of Zuniga very well, since, well, Zuniga is supposed to be a lot older than Don Jose, there are moments in which his voice kind of wavers in terms of the vibrato. So, yeah, my main issue with some of the weak links, so to say, is the vibrato that they possess, which at times can be quite unhealthy and probably needs a lot more tuning up to do. Or maybe they weren't really that suited in such a hall like the Arena di Verona yet. But going to Garcia Sierra, he was actually okay. I mean, his voice kind of showed a little bit of age, which I thought was kind of appropriate for Zuniga, but at the same time it kind of sounded a little bit unhealthy. But still, he was a decent singer all around, and a pretty decent actor all around. And then we have, once again, Gianfranco Montresor, who I saw 2 days ago, or 3 days ago, as Turandot, as the Mandarin. Still has a very solid voice, and was able to play Morales' thankless part very well. And the conducting done by Maestro Nanasi was actually pretty solid. Sure, the cigarette girl scene, the Osekur scene, could have been a little bit faster. In fact, there were some passages that could have been a little bit faster, but his conducting was solid all around. So overall, even though there were a few weak links from the singing department, the production department truly shone for me, and the conducting was decent. And if you haven't seen this production of Carmen, you might as well go check it out. In fact, this is definitely where I would love to watch any production of Carmen. If you want the best, I mean the best production of Carmen, you cannot go wrong with the Arena di Verona. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to tune in this evening for my review of Verdi's Un ballo in maschera. Until then, this is Antoni signing off, and have a nice evening.